So, what happened with you in writing online? You told me 6 months ago you started putting your thoughts out on the internet. That's pretty wild to go from that to 75,000 people following your work. One, how did that happen? And two, what gave you the inclination to start?
Um, what gave me the inclination to start? Well, I'll tackle that one because that one's easier. I was in a bar with a few friends in New York, and they had Twitter, and I had a Twitter at the time, right? But I only used it for like just stalking, like looking at politics, news, whatever. Um, and it wasn't Schrodinger's brat at the time either. It was just like some random like string of letters. And they were like, "Hey, you should get on Twitter." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, sure, I'll just start posting." And at first, it was just silly stuff. Um, but I don't know. I just sort of I guess that's what they call teapot, like this part of Twitter, right? Like when the algo puts you like with a certain group of people. Um, and I found that to be really funny. Like it was just funny. Um, but with Substack, I think it was around September or October last year. I started a Substack because I thought it was just a hip new thing. Like, people were writing online and people weren't using LinkedIn or Medium anymore. So I just tried it out for fun. Yeah. And I guess I had a few bangers, or like a few, I would say the first few were pretty controversial. That's why they went viral. But the result is the result. I guess people followed. Yeah.
What was the first moment something felt different or like there was way more eyeballs on you than with just your friends? Like I assume how it was when it started.
Oh, well, my first viral tweet, it was the one about girls should bring up astrology on the first date. I don't even remember how the tweet goes word for word, but it's something. The idea of it was that girls should bring up astrology on the first date because um, astrology is very controversial for in its own ways, right? Like people think it's like you're believing these woo systems, or and some people are like, oh, I just take it for fun, but fun is still fun. Um, it's basically a litmus test. It's like if you say something really stupid or something really frivolous when you're meeting someone new, how they react to that is more important than what the thing actually is. Um, in psychology, there's a thing called I believe it's called bidding. The concept is called bidding, which is um, how seriously do you take the things that your partner takes seriously? So, for example, I think the study went like there were these two groups of newlywed couples, and they would trace their behaviors on their honeymoon or whatever. And the couple that very listened very attentively to everything that their partner said, those couples lasted a lot longer than the ones who would roll their eyes, brush it off, say, "Oh, that's stupid. I don't want to listen to it." Um, so bidding is basically like if your partner says, "Hey, that bird is pretty cool," and you're not interested in birds, and that bird is like the boringest bird you've ever seen, you have to be like, "Oh, you're right," or "Hey, let me at least pay attention to what you're saying and care about what you care about." Um, but yeah, it was super stupid. It was like some astrology tweet. And I actually didn't know it went that viral until I was seeing screenshots of like people uh on TikTok or like Instagram reel, like taking a screenshot and then talking about me. Some of it was not like positive comments, but still like to be talked about, bad publicity, whatever, I don't care. But the point is that was like the one moment where I was like, the internet is too scary. I don't know what to do with this.
So how come at that point you didn't just say, all right, like I don't want to write anymore online. Like these people are talking about me. Like something pushed you beyond that and kept writing. Why?
I guess I just wanted to. It sounds very simple, but I think figuring out what I want, and even the word to want has been one of the biggest revelation I had in the past 6 months. So I graduated from college last year. I worked very briefly in corporate. Um, had like an existential sort of like, what am I doing here? Like not in the office here, like what am I doing here? Like in the grand scheme, what am I doing here? Uh, and one of the big lessons I learned was, well, what you want do not confuse what you truly want with what you ought, what you think you ought to do. So I feel like a lot of my audience really, they really relate to this, which is, I would say I'm one of those students that, did typically well in college, tried to get good grades, recruited at some good firms, whatnot. Um, and so there's been this pressure, or this, at least this social expectation that, hey, if Sherry is smart, she gets good grades, therefore she should go work at McKinsey, or like, whatever. Should go work at McKinsey. She should be in investment banking. And I think over time, it really grows on people. It really grows on you that if all of my friends are in, stock trading clubs, if all of my friends are in these smarty pants activities and they're all gunning for these positions, then I should be too. If my parents think that, hey, you're going to this college for this program, then you should be doing this after college. So over time, everyone else's expectations of you it becomes what you think you should do. It becomes what you think you want to do. But that will never replace what you truly want to do. And I think that was a realization I had 6 months into my corporate role. I realized that this is not what I imagined it to be at all. Like, I work in a nice glamoury building, but this is not what I wanted. It's also not the best use of what I have to offer. There's a book called Man's Search for Himself by Rollo May. And there's a quote in there where he says, he was quoting one of his clients. He's a psychotherapist. And one of his clients said, well, I'm just a collection of mirrors reflecting what everyone else thinks of me. And that's how I feel a lot of the times. So I think figuring out what you truly want is a lot more difficult than what it sounds like. It's easier when you're a child. Children, they want things. Like, you say, I want things like a child. Or you say someone who wants things like a child, what does it mean? Well, it means they're very straightforward. What they want is what they want. They're not complicated. They know exactly what this is going to do for them. Maybe it's for pleasure. Maybe it tastes good. It's for fun. But either way, they're very clear, and their vision is very unblurred by these social expectations, mimetic desires. I think that's something we ought to preserve as we age. Sure, we have greater impulse controls and all that, but at the same time, we shouldn't lose sight of what is it that we truly want.
How do we preserve that?
I think the easiest way is to first figure out what you don't want. It's easier for people to answer that, right? Because it's like, well, what do you don't want? I don't want to be sick. I don't want debt. I don't want great tragedy. I don't want hell to break loose. And then, well, if you dig a little deeper, the question becomes, why are you afraid to want? Or why are you afraid to admit what you want? Because when you define what you want, you're basically telling yourself, this is now what I think of as successful. And so when you clearly say that and you don't get there, that means you're telling yourself, well, if A is what's successful, then B, C, D, E, F is everything that I consider not successful. So for many people, it's easier to live in this state of like, I'm full of potential. I could become something, but I'm never going to outline what it is I actually want. I'm never going to tell you what I actually want to become. I'm just proud of being like, I'm full of creativity. I'm full of potential. So I think being pluripotent or pluri is the first step of that. The second step is to have the courage to actually be that thing, to do what you want.
So you quit your job working in a fancy office, I'm guessing, as corporate individual. And then you said you went through like a little bit of an existential crisis. And then I'm guessing your next step was figuring out what you wanted to want and creating a way of getting there, of figuring that out. How do you go about doing that? And what it is today that you want to want?
I'd say I'm still in that journey right now. I don't think I've figured it out. I will say I'm pretty lucky because about a month and a half into this whole writing online, figuring things out, I got in touch with David Perel, who runs Rite of Passage, the writing school. and he was looking for someone to. He's amazing. Yeah, the school is the best. Writing Passage is probably the best writing course online. The team is amazing as well. Oh, I just spoiled it. So anyway, I got in touch with David Pearl, and he asked me. He was telling me about like he was looking for someone to write their newsletter. You know, just kind of create content. Reaching out via email, Twitter um, to give Rite of Passage a smart voice, a intellectual, fun to listen to voice. So I thought, why not? So I was writing the Rite of Passage newsletter for a little while. I took a break in the middle, but I'm back now actually, so that's what I'm doing. Um, yeah, so I guess I'm just. I will say that it took me a while to get comfortable telling people that I'm a writer when they ask me what I do,
Why is
because
that?
well, I think writing for most people is not something you do as a profession. It's like cooking, you know, everyone likes to cook. Not everyone's a chef. Not everyone works in a restaurant. Everyone can journal, but not everyone actually just like makes reading and writing their bread and butter of their 24 hours. Um, but I think writing online, like holding myself accountable for posting things regularly, as well as writing for Rite of Passage has really solidified this this I am actually spending like 5-6 hours a day writing. How am I not a writer? That actually hit me the other day, and I was thinking, wow, I'm actually a writer. Like I've actually become the thing I wanted to do. That's kind of crazy. But to answer your first question, I can't say for 100% I know what I want to do for sure. I will say that what I'm doing right now is what I wanted 6 months ago.
That is interesting. That you could 6 months ago you could have wanted to be something or do something, and then you could do it, and then you could still not be sure that that is actually what you really want. It's an interesting thing.
Yeah,
You
I mean,
follow?
yeah. Well, I guess in a broader sense, I'm sure that I want a family of my own one day.